Welcome to today's episode, guys. In this episode, we're going to go ahead and take this photo and turn it into something like this. Stay tuned. Welcome, guys, to another episode of Editing with Mike. This is actually episode 3, and in this video, we're going to be editing the image that you see on your screen right now. This was actually captured in Point Lobos here in California at Carmel by the Sea. Such a wonderful place if you haven't been there before. Definitely worth checking out the whole California coast. It's such a magical place. But anyway, let's get to editing here. In this, we're going for a more saturated, vibrant kind of style. Yeah, so let's get editing. The first thing I'm going to do is align the image properly. So we're going to hit R on the keyboard. That will bring up the crop tool, and I just want to get this aligned to the best of my ability. We're going to press OK. Kind of like that there. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to come down to, oh, and by the way, guys, make sure you're in the develop module right there. Otherwise, you won't be seeing what I see. So develop, and then we're going to go scroll down to lens corrections, press remove chromatic aberration, and press enable profile corrections there. And if it's not already selected, make sure you choose your lens. Choose your make, model, and the profile of your lens. That way, Lightroom kind of removes the distortion created from your lens. All right, so let's go up above, and we're going to go to the very top, and let's try to mess with temperature. I kind of want this to be a little colder. I perceive that it'll be good, just a little bluer than usual. So I'm going to drop the temperature down to about 5300, 5350 there. And exposure, I'm going to raise just the slightest, 0.12 of an exposure change. Contrast, we're going to hit it up with maybe about, let's do 15 contrast. All right. Now here's where you got to trust the process, guys. I'm going to drop the highlights down all the way to -100. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you more details in the highlights. And I'm going to up the shadows here to 100 as well. And that's going to give you more details in your shadows. It's going to look way too just wonky, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and find the white point of the whites and the black point. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to hit Alt on the keyboard, and we're going to drag to the right. And we're going to do +2 there, just a tiny change. And then we're going to do the same thing with the blacks, but instead of going right, we're going to go left. So now I noticed that my blacks are clipping, and the way I could tell is because blacks are starting to come up there. And that's okay, because realistically, clipping your blacks is not a big deal. Because essentially that means you're losing details in the blacks. But sometimes you want to lose details in the blacks for a more artistic or creative effect that you're going for. So we'll go with that. Clarity, we're going to bump up to, I want to say about 15 to 20 range. We're going to keep it at 20 there. And let's see, the vibrance we're going to mess with maybe the kind of the same thing, 20 to 30. We'll do 29 there. Saturation we're not going to mess with, because if I start messing with the saturation, it just kills the photo. It looks like a 10-year-old edited it, you know. Okay, we're going to go down to the tone curve, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring the highlights up just a bit. I'm going to bring the lights up just a bit. I'm going to bring the darks down just a bit. And I'm going to bring the shadows down just a bit. Okay. Next, so that's a pretty quick adjustment. Next, we're going to go to color down below tone curve, and we're going to make sure that all is selected. My instinct, for whatever reason, on every single edit I do is scroll down to the bottom. If I don't see any purples in the image or any magenta in the image, I will just drop the saturation of both of those to -100. Blue and aqua, kind of want to mess with aqua here. Change the hue just the slightest to the right. Luminance, I'm going to drop down just a bit to the left. Saturation, I'm not going to mess with. I think it looks good how it is. And let's see, green. I noticed there's a little bit of green on the rocks, and I don't really like that, so I might bring the green down just a tiny bit, because I want to keep the greens relatively saturated, but not too saturated. And we're going to go up to oranges, and I think we're going to kill the saturation on here completely, because it just looks way too orange on the rocks there. Kind of reminds me of like really yellow teeth, you know. So here's an extreme example. I'm not sure if you could tell, of the oranges, but we're just going to knock all that out, and we're going to do the same, I think, with yellow. Yellow, we're going to go maybe less severe, maybe -25-ish. Okay, that looks a lot better. So before any color adjustments, and then after any color adjustments. Before and after. Reds, I don't see any reds. I'm just going to drop them down to -100. And we're done with the colors here, guys. I'm going to scroll down to split toning. I don't think we're going to mess with split toning in this, so we'll just disregard that. Detail. For some reason, I like keeping the detail at the same settings. If you watched my other tutorials, I'll tell you the same thing. I'm going to keep this at about 70. 70 might be too much, so let's do 65. And I'm going to come down to masking, and while holding Alt, I'm going to move the slider to the right, and anything that's in black is not going to get sharpened. And I really don't want to sharpen the sky there, because then you'll get some unnecessary noise. So I think 25 is about a good middle ground. But depending on your image, you might have a lot of sky, you might have a lot of solid color. So you're gonna have to kind of play with it. Color, I'm gonna drop just a bit. And do we have any noise? I'm sorry, color, I'm gonna bump up all a bit. Why am I saying a bit? I mean, bump that color up to 100, guys. And let me see, noise reduction. I think we might go a little on the noise reduction, maybe like 5. That's it. Anything else, anything more than that, you'll start to notice that your image will get like dreamy looking, and that's kind of something I want to avoid. So I'm about to go to like 5 right there. Okay, so I like that. We're doing pretty well, and this tutorial is going by pretty fast. I'm working on speeding up my edits here. So now what I want to do is I kind of want to do some spot corrections on the rocks here. I want to make the blacks and the whites of the rocks pop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the brush tool, and we're going to work on the blacks first. I'm just going to put the exposure of the brush to -0.01. I'm sorry, we're going to do -0.1. And we're just going to brush over the blacks of the rocks. So let me just do that real quick. I might fast forward this section to kind of save some time, so bear with me. I'm not going to talk during this time. Okay, so we're back, and here's what I came up with. Basically, on the darks, we did a negative exposure, and on the lights, we did a positive exposure to kind of emphasize the contrast on the rock in the middle ground there. And what I also did is, it's very subtle, but I also went over these kind of smaller rocks in the ocean. There's a couple right there, there's some right here, and there's one right here. And I also went over this, I don't even know what that is. It looks like it's a log or something in the water. I went over that a little bit with a negative exposure, just to kind of emphasize the darkness against the rich blue ocean there. But I think that's good for spot adjustments. Now what we're going to want to do is put a grad filter towards the sky, and I think we're going to go kind of diagonal with this one. So we're going to hit M to bring up that grad tool, and we're going to go minus exposure, and we're going to see what it looks like from top left to towards the middle here. Let's see if that looks okay. I think that looks okay, but let's try it from directly top down. I think that might look better. So without the grad filter and with the grad filter, so it kind of just gets rid of that brightness. I might make the exposure here a little higher, so negative 0.25 I think would be a good point there. And we're going to do the same thing on the bottom, but this time we're going to do a negative exposure of a little higher, a little lower of an exposure. Sorry, I'm confusing you guys. So we're going to do from bottom to top. And what this does is it creates just a little bit of depth. We're going to bring down the exposure to maybe negative 0.5. And actually, one thing I also noticed is this branch up here is a little too dark. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the brush tool, up the exposure to maybe 0.5, and we're just going to brush over it. I kind of want to bring back some of the detail in that branch. So let's color over that. Maybe bring the exposure up to 0.75. I'm going to press O, right? Just to, sorry, I'm kind of like thinking while talking to you guys. Okay. Let's see how that looks. Okay, I think that looks decent. It's a little brighter, and you can see a little bit more detail in it. And I think that's it. Let's see if we could benefit from a vignette here. I'm going to scroll all the way down to effects, and we're going to bring down the vignette just a tad, maybe to -7. I'm going to bring the feather up all the way. And the point of this vignette, guys, is to kind of get your eyes to look at the center of the picture rather than the sides. And naturally, the leaves on the bottom, or the trees on the bottom, are kind of already forcing you. It's like you come to the spot, and these trees towards the bottom, they're leading you to the ocean. And what the vignette will do is it'll kind of emphasize that. So without the vignette and with the vignette. So I think it's a little nice subtle effect there. And I think that's it for the edit, guys. I think that looks pretty good. Anything else that I need to discuss? Let me just double check, go through all the settings here. I want to keep this one relatively short and simple. I know my previous tutorials have been like at least 20 minutes long. Hopefully you guys enjoy those, because I do think they're pretty packed with information. But let's for once try a little shorter one and see how that goes. Anyway, guys, from here you would just kind of export it, file, export, or Control-Shift-E, Command-Shift-E if you're on a Mac. And the only thing you really need to worry about here is what your file settings are. I always set it to JPEG as the image format, quality always 100, and color space I set to sRGB. And that's it. From there, you just hit export and you're good to go. All right, guys, thanks for joining me on this episode of Editing with Mike. Hope you guys enjoyed the content. If you guys did, please show me some love and hit the subscribe button. And If you like the video, obviously go ahead and hit that like button. It shows me a lot of support there. If you have any questions for me, guys, leave it in the comment section below. If you have any suggestions or feedback and anything else that you want to say to me, you could also mention that below. By the way, guys, what do you think of the webcam? Do you think it's kind of obtrusive and distracting? I don't know. I've asked that question in my first tutorial, but I think I'm going to continue to ask it until someone says something about it. But let me know. Let me know what you guys think about the webcam. And depending on the feedback, we might take it off or we might keep it on. All right, guys. See you in the next episode. Peace.